Yeah. Can't wait to sit inside. Well, soon. Oh, hi guys. Sorry, I've been daydreaming here. Uh, yeah, I really can't wait to sit inside my baby and drive towards the sunset. Soon. Anyway, so hi, welcome to the next episode of the 72 GT6 Anna. So in the last episode we serviced the differential, we put new bearings, new seals, we painted it. We still have to fill it up with oil, but that's gonna happen later. And now we are ready to start assembling the rear end. But as you may remember, Santa brought me a gift, which is CV joint conversion kit for my rear end to replace these unreliable donuts. So today, that's what we're gonna do. Let's see how we're gonna remove the old ones, even though they've never been on the road, but we torqued them 4 years ago, I believe, with David. So I believe that now we're gonna need a puller to take them out. So I realized when I was editing my last video that it was so much talking. So this one, we're gonna try to do more action and less talking. So let's get crack-a-lacking. So first thing first, let's turn it back into a car, not a spaceship with those hover whatever. Oh my god, it's heavy. So I want to just put 2 bolts here and make the axle hold the suspension in place. You know what I mean? The other option is to put the spring. Maybe that's what we should do. No. Okay. We want it to be higher though, so I don't know. Okay, so we're gonna put the jack underneath. I've got the jack. I've got jack. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have to make a hub puller because I gave mine to someone to use it and they never returned it. I'm hoping that they're gonna watch my video and they're gonna get in touch with me. But actually I posted the video this morning, so I didn't give the guy a chance to call me. But I have no patience to wait anymore, so I might make another one. That's good. So let's take the wheel off and see if we can remove the hub. Alright, so what I did was I raised the other one too and I put the axle so now they can hold each other, because now we're gonna attempt to undo the hub, and I'm afraid that if that miraculously happens, once the hub comes out, there's not gonna be anything to hold the vertical link there and might hit me in the face. So I'm holding it here with this strap to the other side. Let's see if that's gonna work. So I'm gonna be optimistic because, like I said, this has been assembled a few years ago with Cheftush. We assembled it. I didn't take in consideration the spacers and the shims, and we just started tightening it. Then the hub became super tight, and then I did some research and I realized that there's a procedure here where you put spacers inside between the 2 bearings, because you have rear and front bearing, and that spacer in the middle determines your preload on the bearing, which I have no idea how to measure. I have the procedure in the manual, which it's not very clear to me, but we're gonna think about that once we take the hub out. So let's undo the nut. Right. Should I be optimistic? Okay, I will try. if I don't try, I'm gonna hate myself. The chances are very slim, but I have to try. Okay. Okay, fingers crossed. It's actually coming out. There you go. Okay. It actually worked. Yeah, let's take this completely out now. Okay, we're gonna have to remove it again from here. Yep. So is that the spacer and the shim? Well, I don't know anything about this, and I'm gonna go get myself educated. Alright, so what I made was a tool that is gonna help me set up this preload or Endplay of the rear hub. So I'm gonna explain a little bit later how this is gonna help me. But before that, because I wasn't clear how this whole setup worked, I wanted to familiarize myself with that. And now I figured it out. So if you don't know, I'm gonna explain it to you as well. Here, in this case, our vertical link, which is this, also acts as a hub, which means that our bearings go on both sides of the vertical link. So if you see here inside, we have the race of the inner bearing, which is the smaller one, goes like that. And on the other side, we have the race of the outer bearing, which is the bigger one, and it goes like that. And they, of course, are pushed all the way in. They have a shoulder inside that you have to go all the way in, make sure that there's no space between the shoulder and the race. So obviously, when you have one bearing underneath, the other bearing on the outside, now you have certain distance between the outer surfaces of the inner races of both bearings. So this distance between this surface and this surface is what we're looking for, because this distance plus half to 2.5 tau, according to the spec, needs to be the distance between these two surfaces, here and here, because the inner bearing goes right here. I don't know if you see, and this surface is what touches this surface, and the outer bearing goes right here, and this surface is what touches this surface. So obviously, if these two surfaces go too tight, they're going to compress the bearings and going to put preload on them. If these two surfaces are too far apart, of course, we're going to have too much play in the hub, which is not good. To achieve that, we need to put here the correct amount of spacers. So when the outer nut is torqued to the correct torque, which I believe is 110 foot-pounds, if I remember well, then everything here gets compressed, including the spacer and the shims, and this distance is the exact same distance of the two bearings, plus half to 2.5 tau. So that's how it works. However, to measure this distance between these two, which, by the way, I cleaned up. I took them out, I cleaned all the grease with brake clean, and I sprayed them with WD-40 so they don't rust, because that's how the manual wants you to set up the Endplay. So to measure the distance between them, it's tricky though, because they are deep down there. So you have to measure it in this position. Right now, how do you measure it so precise? Without that tool that is mentioned in the manual, which I don't even understand how it works, because the manual is 50 years old and it's like the drawings are not very clear. So I can't even reproduce that tool because I don't know how it works. And I went online and I looked around for any other instructions if somebody else did it, and I found this beautiful paper by Ed, who has a beautiful website, and I've used it in the past for my TR6 adventures and now for GT6 as well. He has articles about so many different projects on his cars, the TR6 and the GT6, and with pictures, instructions and everything. So thank you so much, Ed, for that. It's fantastic information that you provide out there. So what Ed did, this is just an example. He took a plate, or actually he made a chunk of metal which had perfectly clean and even surface here, and he put it under the one of the bearings. I believe he did it the other way around, but that doesn't matter. So now the lower bearing is nicely snugged against its race, and the top bearing on top. So now he also has a surface down there which shows him exactly where the race of the outer bearing in this case is. So then what he did, he put something like another chunk of metal there, perfectly parallel surfaces and a known height, and it also has a hole in the middle. So he put it right on top of the inner race of the inner bearing, and then through the hole with a depth gauge he is able to measure the distance all the way down to the surface at the bottom. So now he knows the distance from that surface to this surface. Of course, when you subtract this height, you know exactly the distance between this surface and the outer surface of the outer bearing. So now he can add 2.5 tau, or half or 2.5 tau to that surface, and that tells him exactly how much the distance from this surface to this surface needs to be when the nut is torqued 210 foot-pounds. So that's what he did. However, I don't have a depth gauge, so I can't take a precise measurement. I tried doing it this way without anything on the top here. I just tried with my caliper, but that's not precise at all because it's a long distance down there, and I might take the measurement diagonally. So you see now it shows me 2.36, let's say, 2.37, so it varies, and I don't like the idea. That's why I made this tool, which also has a known measurement, but I'm going to measure it again. But I'm going to measure it again because yesterday I measured it when it was out of the lathe and it was hot, and then I measured it later when it was not that hot anymore and the measurement was different. And now it is cold because it's the next day, if I didn't mention, and the measurement might be different again. Yeah, 2.968. Let me write this down somewhere. Okay. So then I put this plate underneath, which has a shoulder here at the end, but that doesn't matter because the inner race of the bearing comes here. So this is how we're gonna do it. This is virtually the same thing as here. This diameter equals this diameter here, and this diameter equals this diameter. So now we can put this underneath. We don't need this anymore. We're gonna put it like this. We're gonna put it like this. And now this bearing can go here. And now we know that the two bearings are parallel to each other. Okay. And now I can measure the distance between this and this with a dial gauge. Unfortunately, as I'm editing the video right now, I realized that probably my phone rang or something happened and my clip ended here, so I'm missing the part where I measured and where I did all the calculations after that. But anyways, I filmed that for the other side when I was doing the other side later. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna skip to the other side and we're gonna measure there. Everything so far is the same for both sides. So now we're gonna measure the right side and we're gonna do all the calculations for there and we're gonna figure out the spacer. And then when it comes to assembly though, I didn't film the assembling of the right side, so we're gonna have to come back to the left side and show the assembling of the left side. And the assembling for both sides is the same, so it doesn't really matter that we're showing the other side again. But don't worry, the measurements and the calculations are based only on one side. So that's how we're gonna do it. Left, right, and then left again. I need to give you a little demo though, because you're gonna see me using this little wrench in the video. So I wanna show you why, because it's not very clear in the video. So for example, if we wanna measure the height of this socket, what we can do is zero the gauge at the bottom, right there. Now here we can slide the socket and measure it, right? But there I can't move the part. I can't move the shaft in the middle. That's why I use this little wrench to put it on top of the part. And I could put the little wrench on top of the thing, measure this distance, and then subtract the thickness of the wrench, and that's the height of my socket. So that's why I'm using this wrench in the video. So here I'm zeroing the gauge to the inner race of the bearing. Okay. That's good. We'll take our thing here, whatever that is, a wrench. Okay, 980, and this is going back to 0. So let's measure this thing. So this is 58.5 thou. Alright, so now let's see what we can do with this information. So our tool, the tool that I made, is 29680, right? The measurement that we just took was 980 thou. So let's see what we can do with this information. So my tool, let's draw my tool. It has this big plate at the end, and then it has this bigger diameter, and then it has the smaller diameter, and that's where it ends. So we have the bigger bearing, which is the outer bearing, I believe. I'm just gonna draw the race of the bearing. And we have the smaller bearing here. That's the race of the bearing too. So these are our two bearings, this one and this one. So we know that the distance from here to here, we have this distance, 29680. And we just measured, and we know that from this end of the race to here, so we have a little wrench on top though. So we know that from here to here, we have 9800. The thickness of the tool is 58.5 thou. So if we add this to here, the total distance from here to here is gonna be, let's add it, 5, 6, 1, 2, 0, 3. Right, so this is the total distance of the tool plus the wrench. If we subtract from here now this distance, we're gonna get this distance, which we're looking for. This is the distance that we're looking for. So this minus this, that is 5, 6, 12 minus 8 is 4, 0, 2. So this is our distance here, 2.0465. So this is the distance between the two outer surfaces of the inner races of the bearings when they are mounted in the hub. Great, now we know this distance, but to this distance we need to add half to 2.5 thou of Endplay. So let's say we add 2 thou. So our final number that we're looking for is 2.0485. Let's assemble the axle now and see how much that's gonna be. So the spacer, again, with the bevel towards the axle, like that. This is our hub. Now let's measure this distance. All right, so let's measure this. Okay, so this is 2040 and we're looking for 20485. So we need a bigger spacer for here. So this is the axle that we assembled with Cheftush, and we tightened it and it was too tight. So that's the reason why, because we are missing 8.5 tau. So we need to make a spacer that has this thickness plus 8.5. Now, because I have a mini lathe, I can make my own spacers, but if you don't have that possibility, there are spacers available between 139 tau and 155, I believe, 5 different thicknesses. And separately, you can buy shims as well that are 3 tau each, so you can stack up spacers and shims, and you can get to the correct measurements that you need. So our current spacer is 146.5, right? Okay. And 146.5 plus 8.5 equals 155 tau. And we have a washer that is 155 exactly. So this washer came from here actually. Isn't that funny? So we have the exact thickness and we also have the exact outer diameter. But the outer diameter doesn't really matter because here there's room for the spacer to go in, because when the spacer is there, okay, the other way, with the bevel in, the bearing can go over it. Oops, the bearing goes this way. The bearing goes over it. The bearing doesn't need to hit the spacer, right? The spacer goes inside the bearing. So there's lots of room here for the spacer to go, and this one can go there too. So we have absolutely no problem with the outer diameter. We just need to turn the inner diameter to this one, and we're golden. I didn't forget to give it a little bit of a bevel, so that's how it should go. Perfect. Let's assemble again and give it one more try. So we need 2 inches and 48 tau and a half, right? .248. Okay. Well, 2.0480 is just a half a tau below the number that we were looking for, 2.0485. But 2.0485 was including 2 tau of an Endplay. So in this case, we only have a tau and a half Endplay, which is perfectly within tolerance because we need to have between half and 2.5 tau Endplay. So we're perfect. Okay. All right, so in this case, let's assemble it. So before we forget, we have to put our seal here on the outside, because if we don't put it now, we can't ever put it. And this is the smaller seal. The bigger one goes on the other side. Then we need the bigger bearing, the outer bearing that goes there. We need to press it in, but before that, we're gonna pack it with grease. That's why I'm wearing those gloves. I hate grease, but I have no choice. So I didn't know how to pack them properly before, and a viewer, I don't remember who it was, on the channel pointed to that I am not packing it properly, and then I realized, and I went and I did a research, and I realized that I wasn't packing them at all. So you have to press grease from one side until you see it coming here between the bearings on the other side, you know. Only then it is properly packed. So my front bearings on the GT6 are not packed properly. That's when somebody corrected me and I said I'm gonna go back and do it properly, and I still haven't done it, but I remember that I still have to go and do it. Okay, I think this one is good. I'm gonna put it here and we're gonna go and press it a little bit later, but before that, while I'm on it, I'm gonna pack the other one as well. I'm gonna try this one the other direction. Let's see if that's gonna work better for me. Maybe I should buy one of these bearing packers. There's a tool that does it for you. It's so much easier and I hope cleaner. Well, it turns out this is really hard diameter to find, you know. So the only thing that I was able to find with this diameter is an old synchro ring from a Spitfire, which hits only on the inner race of the bearing, and then we can put something else on top, and then something else on top, and maybe even something else on top. All right. Let's see how that's gonna go. Okay. Okay, it's all the way in. So you see why I don't throw away my old parts. You see, a broken carrier from a release bearing, an old synchro ring. They come handy sometimes. The only thing that I don't know is how the heck are we supposed to put this seal in later, but it was in before, so I guess I put it on somehow. Anyways, let's assemble the rest. So now we can put our spacer here, so we don't forget it. Not really sure how we're supposed to do this, but I guess something like that. So this bearing goes from underneath. Yeah, actually the seal went in. There you go. So maybe now with a big screwdriver. Okay, we're gonna do that at the end. For now it went in. The flange pushed it in, which is good. Okay, so now here I'm gonna put some more grease. Okay, just as a spare grease in between the bearings. Then we can put our inner bearing, which now also needs to be pressed right. Okay, we're not gonna press it all the way in. Okay, we still have play here, but gonna let the rest be pushed by the nut on the outside. All right, now here we shouldn't forget to put the seal. Wow, it went in by hand. And it's time to put the axle on. So here we have the spacer. We shouldn't forget that, right? Here we have a washer and the nut. And now we have to torque the nut to 110 psi, 110 foot-pounds. And how are we gonna do that? I don't know. How are we gonna hold this? I don't want to hold it on the vise. All right, hopefully that's gonna work now. I don't want to bend this stud, you know. Good. Actually worked. And now the moment of truth. Let's see if this is still turning. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. And now there's a notch here that we need to bend down right here so it doesn't turn. And we're done with this wheel. Wow. I was thinking for the last 3 years about this process. Finally it's done. And I know how to do it. Wow, good. There you go. Not going anywhere. Now the rest should be relatively easy, right? We should be able to put it on here. I have new poly bushings there that we installed with Cheftush long time ago. These are also new here. So they even give you new bolts for here. All right, well, one side is done. Now, we shouldn't let it hang on the CV joint because you see now it's coming out. Well, it's not a big deal. It can hang on it, but it's not healthy. So we have to install the spring. For now, I'm just going to hook up the ratchet here to somewhere there because the spring, I have to decide something about the spring. Maybe we're going to install here a spacer to lower the rear end a little bit and to give a little bit of a negative camber on the rear wheels because these cars, because of how the suspension is, they're normally with a little bit of positive camber and I don't like that. And I also don't like the height of the car. So that's going to be a subject for another video, but like I said, we have to consider here something, so that's why I don't want to install the spring yet. So I'm just going to put the ratchet. One side, done. Yes. Still spinning, even though I know that it worked once. I was still worried, but it's perfect. All right, so time to assemble the other side as well. All right, so it's done. Both axles are now changed and we can say goodbye to the rotoflex. It's an expensive upgrade, I know, but it is worth because the rotoflex was invented with a good idea, but apparently it was a weak spot. Imagine if that breaks on the road, it's gonna be a mess. I know that many other makes and models used rotoflexes, but I don't think anybody uses them nowadays. Or if they do, they are probably a better quality. Anyways, CV joints are having lots of troubles. There's almost no maintenance. The only thing that you need to watch is the boot. If the boot gets torn, you have to replace it. I've recently done that on my Ford F-150. So you can imagine if you can change it on an F-150 here, it must be much easier, I'm expecting. Anyways, enough talking. I'm happy that another job that we started with Cheftush years ago, assembling the rear suspension, it's now done. Let's put an end to this video. I hope that you enjoyed it and I hope it's useful for some other people who are looking for information how to set up their Endplay on whether it's a CV joint axle or it is rotoflex axle, it's the same way. That doesn't matter. So I hope that this is helpful for some people. If you like the video, of course, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Thank you for doing all that for me, guys, for liking, for commenting, for subscribing, for sharing, for supporting me financially. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, guys. Bye.